Are you ready? All right. Nature Forces by Genevieve Gravel, Chapter 5. Let's go! I loved Alexandria, the high energy and the hustle and bustle. Most of all, I loved the people. There were so many different types of people, tall friends and short ones, fat and thin, dark and light, green-eyed and brown, and everybody was so beautiful to me, each in their own unique way. And we all worked together. It was a family of over 1,000 people. We called a society. They took me in. They educated me. They were the mother I never had. Alexandria means love and kinship with nature. The prevailing belief was that if it harms none, do what you will. And I once embroidered this very saying onto a sampler that I hung proudly in my room. It is safe to say I was overtly obsessed with Alexandria and the humanity within. When Dad asked me, "How did you spend your time today?" I said I made dolls with Lady Markley's daughter. We made dolls of yarn. I taught her to dye the yarn before weaving it for a brighter color. First we bathed the yarn in a solution of flowers and waters, just like you taught me, Daddy. Then we rinsed and repeated before one last salt bath to fix the color to the cotton. And it worked, Daddy, just like you said, I responded, beaming with pride. Very nice, he absently responded. Many times over the years, I would ask my father if I could learn to fish or teach or build. I wanted to know everything. My father saw to it that I studied everything I wanted to. Daddy, do you suppose I could go one day with the butchers, like on a hunt? A hunt? A hunt. That got his attention. My father seemed bewildered. Yes, Daddy. I've already asked Derek to train with me with the bow, and I'll practice real hard, Daddy, I promised. I begged. A hunt? A bow? He questioned. Is this about that boy, Derek? He's a fine gentleman, honey, but you are only 16. He protested. I'm 16. Besides, this is not about some cute boy. Boy, was he cute. It's about... it's just there's so many people, and they have so many lives. Daddy, don't you see? Don't you get it? No. He didn't understand. He never understood me. I was speaking his language, but somehow I was just making no sense. You taught me to respect all life, and I do, and I want to learn everything. I want to experience what everyone else experiences. I want to understand life. Don't you see, Daddy? Don't you? Please don't say no, Daddy. Please. I rambled on, begging him to say yes, so I could go spend time with Derek. One simple word, he responded. No. Okay, Daddy, I said, looking at my feet. And with that, I told my first lie. I did keep my word. I practiced very hard. Derek said I was the best he'd ever seen. A real quick study. My first lesson with Derek consisted of lecture. This is a salt satchel. This is a small leather pouch with a small opening that allowed the salt to pour freely while walking. We must wait until we were in unmapped territory before we began to pour, to conserve the salt, he instructed. I was enthralled, and I hung on to his every word. We must be friends with both horse and hounds, as they are not only our guides, they are our companions as well. Besides, a long hunt in the wood can drive a man mad, Derek went on. Our private lectures went on for weeks. Then weeks of practice before he took me on my first hunt. It was only a day hunt, and we didn't venture far from home. Derek led me just a few miles to the south and into the grasslands. It took me several days' hunt before I took a shot, and many more before I made a kill. It was the most beautiful light golden deer. She was young, and her fur glistened in the dawn as I crept upon her. My heart pounded so loudly in my chest I was sure I would scare the animal off. But she never saw me coming. She went down quick, experiencing little pain. Or so I told myself. It was perfect! I did it, Derek! I screamed, jumping up and down, feeling more excited than I had been in my young life. Nothing I had experienced, nothing I had learned had prepared me for what happened next. We must process this gift within the day, to prevent decay. He handed me a long blade with a bear carved in a wooden handle. I held my hand and I ran my fingers over the embossment. You must gut it. He looked at me, and I looked at him. I know, I let out with a sigh. My hand shook. I lost focus when the blood began to ooze out. Tears burned my eyes. The cut ended up being anything but clean. I was so embarrassed and worried that I had disappointed Derek. I almost vomited. If Derek were not there, I would have. Now you drink of her blood, to honor her life, to allow her spirit to live on and in through you, he instructed. He cupped his hands together and filled them with the deer's blood. And Derek rose above me. His gaze pierced my soul. He was so strong, so confident. Everything about him was intense. I was mesmerized as he poured the fresh, warm blood into my mouth. Some trickled down my chin and onto my neck, and Derek bent down and licked the blood from my neck, stopping to suck it from my bottom lip. I was lost for words. The words spun around me, and I felt the depths of desire I'd never imagined. He rose to his feet and held out his hand. Come, it's time to go. We must get this creature to the butcher's shop so the people can eat tonight. Tonight we are heroes. We are the bringers of life, he said, patting me on the back. You did good, little one. Little one? Little one, I thought. My heart raced. Was he not just kissing me? Did I miss something? I questioned everything I'd ever known. After getting the kill to the butcher's, Derek walked me to my door. He didn't kiss me goodnight, though. I ached to feel his lips on mine one more time. I thought him so romantic. I was so confused. Was this love? Derek. I whispered his name as I caressed myself. Even his name was strong and mysterious. Everything about him excited me. The next day I ran to the butcher shop to find Derek. He's on the practice ring, Cherie told me while offering me up some sweet apple cake. His mother was a tall woman with plump, full curves, long black hair, and bright green eyes. It was easy to understand why men found themselves drawn to her beauty. A caring mother, she fed her twin daughters, Penelope and Phoebe, some sweet apple cake. The babies were always by her side and never out of her sight, and I assumed they always would be, as babies were born blind. Their father, Spencer, and his partner, Jackson, had left to map the wood further than ever before. Leaving behind his wife and children was the hardest decision he'd ever made. He was a man of wisdom and dedication to his work, and exploring and mapping. He told himself, for his children, he must do this. In truth, it was only for himself. He had always asked, what is out there? Everyone in town knew, but none dared to say it to Cherie's face, though I'm sure she knew it as well. No one knew Spencer as Cherie had. They were friends from birth and lovers from an early age. He had said his goodbyes to his lovely wife and his twin infant girls for the last time. Derek, you must keep watch of the family while I am away. I am counting on you, son. He embraced his son with a gentle kiss on the boy's forehead and turned to leave. And Derek had confided with me that was the last memory he had of his father. Cherie would tell us tales that she would see with her gift of sight. Her bond with her husband was so strong. She never lost his energy. And she told me of how Spencer and Jackson discovered a world beyond compare, through the woods and into the jungle, filled with life they never imagined. And the weather became warmer and warmer, and the air filled with moisture. As the men struggled with the fire and hunting in this new environment, they persisted with passion, taking note of each day, every plant, every animal, from ground squirrel to snake to jaguar and monkey. Each species the men met with great fascination. They stood in awe at the sheer size of a tree so glorious one could reside inside. The men named it Ashton. The strongest and wisest with age, the tree marked the beginning of a new map, and the men had officially gone further than any other who had come before them. Spencer and Jackson followed a trickle of fresh water next to the tree to a rushing river and out to the great blue ocean. They named this the Spencer-Jackson Trail. The river opened up to a clearing of a tree and a bush to the expanse of the deep blue, the ocean. They stayed with the intent of discovering all and conquering this new environment. The men built a cabin far off the beach and into the jungle. They dug a well. They built a fire pit. I don't believe they had any intention of ever returning home, despite the lies they had told their family, perhaps the lies they told themselves. Their mission was simple: to observe and report. They had been gone a year, knowing they needed to return to Alexandria, but lacking the desire. The ocean had an allure that the men could not free themselves from. This very allure led them to the rocky shallows in search of a new species of fish or coral. A rogue wave hit them, and it hit them hard. And Spencer found himself impaled on a sharp rock. His intestines spilled out into the ocean, and blood mixed with the salt water and created a ring of red around his deformed body. He suffered there. It took him 2 days to die. Alone. Jackson had washed away in the wave, and it took less than a generation for his memory to be forgotten. But his legacy would never be lost. Cherie knew in her soul every day her Spencer was alive, and she knew in her soul the day he had died. Or so she said. Cherie was the only witch that I knew closely that had the gift of sight. I never confided in her that I too had this inner sight. I wasn't embarrassed. I loved having something that was all mine. I didn't want anyone to know what I knew, or that I spied on people in their most intimate of moments, that I would often peek in on their inner thoughts. And above all, these things fascinated me. It was still none of my business. Cherie's home was an adorable cabin, surrounded with rows of trees, cherry, orange, apple, and various nuts, and she baked the best pastries in Alexandria with her fresh-picked fruits. Everyone loved Cherie and her delicious delights, myself included. I took the cake she had offered me and shoved it in my mouth all at once and ran off to find Derek. "Don't run with your mouth full," Cherie shouted after me. "You may choke." I found Derek right where his mother said I would, on the training range amongst the cleared field of wheat, and I stopped short. His image mesmerized me as he pulled back the bow and the arrow sprang forth and hit the target of a dead center. In the cold air rising from the slight gasp I let out. "Hi," I sighed. I felt my cheeks warm. I'm sure I blushed. I hoped he didn't notice. "I was just thinking of you," Derek responded. He was thinking of me. Of me. He thought of me when I'm not here. I wonder if he has the same thoughts of me as I've had of him the night before. I wondered if his thoughts of me filled him with overwhelming desire. "Oh, what thoughts?" I asked calmly, trying not to spaz out. I was twirling my braided hair, and I quickly dropped my braid and turned away, and pretending to notice a far-off bird or something that wasn't there. "You did so well with the last hunt. I wanted to ask you to join us again tomorrow. It's just a day hunt. We won't go far from home. Do you think your father will let you?" Derek asked. "My father never knew where I was or what I was up to. Of course, he's very proud of me." I lied. "Great. We'll leave at dawn." His beautiful smile shone behind that bright words. We spent the day readying our packs and sharpening our arrows and practicing our shots. "Will I see you in the circle tonight?" I asked as it was time for me to go. The Lady June had another son, and the festivities should be spectacular. "I'll be there, and it should be a great night, and I have a big surprise," he responded. I remained calm as I walked away, wondering if he was watching me leave. And once I reached the trail home, out of sight, I screamed while jumping up and down in little short pops. A surprise? What could it be? A surprise for me? My heart sung. Everything had to be just perfect. I had to be just perfect. Maybe tonight will be the night when I can finally feel his arms wrapped around me and feel his body against mine. I hoped. My father, Celeste, and I left for the party before early dusk, and my sister and I ran along ahead. I tried to keep up, but Celeste ran with a quick determination. "Why are you going so fast? Slow down, wait for me," I called to Celeste. "Why should I?" Celeste shouted back over her shoulder. "We're only going for you, and you're only going for the food." We split up as soon as we arrived. My father stopped to talk to the botanist about some herbs he was looking for. My sister ran off to search for Palo. It was a treasured respite from my sister's growing hospitality towards me. I ate and drank wine, and I danced with the children in a playful manner. It should have been a perfect evening, except I couldn't find Derek. The warmth from the stone fire pit filled the air. Coats came off as wine poured freely, and music filled the night air with a joyous aura. And when I heard a man's voice ring out, "Stop the music! Stop the music! I have a glorious announcement." I knew him immediately. I knew the voice immediately, and I turned, and Derek was up there on stage calling out for attention, and the sight of him brought a smile to my face. "This 1st of May, the Lady Mulaney and I are to wed," Derek's voice sang out into the crowd as he raised his arms to the sky, and great thunders of cheers rang out so loud it hurt my ears. My heart stopped as I looked to the woman by Derek's side. She was petite, with smooth, creamy skin and shy blue eyes, and she was exquisite to behold, the exact opposite of me. Hot tears stained my face, and I felt as if an arrow had shot through my heart. I couldn't leave fast enough. I ran and ran as fast as my feet could carry me in these silly wooden shoes with the kitten heel, and I ran past the stage of the bonfire and up the stairs of the circle. I tripped over the tail of my full skirt before pulling my skirts to my waist, but not stopping. If I ever needed my sister, this was the time. And I ran through my tears up the path and beyond the great stones of 3 until I had reached the clearing of the willow. I knew my sister would be there. I needed her as I had never needed anyone before. I found them in a loving embrace, next to naked. "Genevieve, what are you doing here?" Celeste was irritated. "She follows me around, jumping and slobbering all over me just like a puppy," she said to Palo, as if I had no existence. "What are you doing here?" Celeste snapped. I need to talk. Something has happened," I tried to say through my bubbling tears. I tried to catch my breath, and I leaned against the giant tree. "Get out! This is our place, and it's not for little kids," Celeste shouted. "I'm not a little kid!" Was this all I could say? The shock of her rejecting me now when I needed her most hit me like a second arrow to the chest. My tear-stained cheeks began to warm with the confusion and anger, while slowly running my fingers over the C and the P encased in the heart embossment carved deep in the bark of the tree. And I wondered, would I ever know love? The kind of love that would last for all time, just like the carving in the tree. And I cried into my hands, and I hung my head, and my long, thick braid fell over my broad shoulders. "Celeste, be kind. She's upset." Palo tried to calm her. "Forget about her. She ruins everything," Celeste snapped in anger as she pulled her skirt down and rose to her feet. "Celeste, she's your sister. How can you be so cruel?" Palo scolded. "You want her? Take her," Celeste spat as she walked away. "Come, I'll walk you home." Palo reached his hand to me, and I took it, and we walked the opposite way. Palo and I walked slowly along the stream and down the mountainside, and he never once asked what was upsetting me. When we came to my favorite rock, the same one that my sister and I bathed by, I asked, "Can we sit for a spell?" And so we did, and for the longest time I sat staring at the clear reflection of the stars in the crystal water. "I never knew my mother," I said, not to Palo so much as to the river. Not that I didn't have many mother figures in my life. The mothers of Alexandria were all suckers for sweet little orphan girls like me. I continued looking into his eyes, and I saw what my sister must see, as strong, honorable, and safe. Still, I miss my mother, and I dreamed of what she must have been like, and I imagine she looks just as Celeste does now. Celeste is the closest thing in my life that I have to a mother, but she has memories of my mother that I'll never have a chance for. I wiped the tears from my face, and I caught a breath before continuing. I longed to fill this void in my gut, this wanting, needing, aching to know that where I come from is a place of love. I will forever feel as if I took my mother's life, I took her joy, and I stole her dreams just by being born. And Celeste hates me for it, I cried. Palo wrapped his arms around me and let me cry. I do not know how all this got so out of hand, Celeste thought. Honestly, how could my love side with her? He left with her and her crybaby games, Celeste ranted out loud as she walked home. What was he doing? What were they saying? Was it about me? Celeste wondered aloud as she doubled back and found us sitting on a rock. She was too far to hear, but not too far to see his arms around me. Enraged, she felt the heat rise from the bottom of her feet to the top of her head, and Celeste marched right to us and grabbed me by the hair. Celeste, you don't understand, Palo pled. Let her go. Let's talk about this. Never. Something needs to be done about this Sal. First my mother, and now she's trying to take you too, Celeste yelled. No, I screamed, and she hit me as I tried to flee. For such a large girl, I sure was weak. I didn't try to fight back. I just went with her silently, and when Celeste and I arrived home, we separated to our own rooms, slammed one door, then slammed the other, and I fell onto my bed in tears. I was overcome with emotion. How could I be so stupid? Did I really think, even for a moment, that I was worthy of love? I hated my sister from that moment forward, and I swore I would show her what robbing someone of love really meant. The following morning, we all sat quietly at the table. The smell of freshly squeezed juices awoke all my senses. I glared at her. She glared at me. Okay, girls, whatever it is, we must clear the air before we eat. We mustn't anger the spirits, my father said. Shut up! We both shot back simultaneously. No one ate that morning. That day at the Great Rocks of Three, Dad had begun with his lessons on love potions, and I was hanging on to every word and taking notes. Perhaps all Derek needed was a little potion. Later in my free time, I took all that was needed from Dad's cabin laboratory, and I followed my notes to the letter, making a paste of mandrake and nightshade. The smell was horrendous. Ugh, I gagged. No one would drink this. So I added dried rose, jasmine, vanilla beans, and cinnamon sticks to the mix. And the distinct sweet odor filled my nostrils, and I inhaled deeply. Much better, I said to myself, and I poured the freshly melted oil into a small glass bottle, and I corked the bottle and tied a small red bow to the neck, and I buried the potion into the planter box of daisies outside my window. And I stayed awake all night, picking the dirt from under my nails and hating my sister. This potion was supposed to set for a week. A month later, Celeste and I had still not spoken, nor shared a meal. I never went on a hunt again. I avoided Derek. I just kept my studies to myself, and I never felt so alone. With every glance toward my sister, my anger grew and grew until I could not take it. I had spent the day in the garden. I turned the soil and dug the trenches with my bare hands that had begun to blister from the carved stone trawl, and the sun felt warm on my neck that had begun to turn pink, and I dug my hands into the deep soil up to my elbow as if to hug the dirt. I kept fussing with the hem of my cotton skirt stained with dirt, and eventually I tied it in between my legs to get it out of my way as I gardened. Now, Celeste was going to be so angry when I trucked mud through the house. I had thought to myself, but I didn't care much what Celeste thought these days. Perhaps I was looking for a fight. I don't know, whatever my reasoning was, however, I did not clean up before entering the house. One step into the house, and I heard, "What the hell is wrong with you?" from my sister Celeste. The peace and tranquility I had found from spending the day digging in the dirt and communing with Mother Nature had been robbed from me, and in that instant, with this verbal onslaught from my beloved sister, I offered her no response. My heart filled with anger and hatred as I closed my bedroom door behind me. I dug up the bottle containing the potion of love and seduction, and I placed it in my pocket. I caressed it often through the following days, wondering if I had the nerve. Thanks for listening. That was Chapter 4, The Nature of Forces by Genevieve Gravel, available on Amazon. Subscribe for more, and I'll be back with... Oh, that was Chapter 5, sorry. I'll be back with Chapter 6. Okay, bye!